Hey, what's up guys, TechTine here and I'm back again with a brand new video. So before I begin, as always, I want to thank you all so much for watching, and if you haven't subscribed to the channel, go ahead and consider doing so. That would definitely be much appreciated. So usually whenever a phone comes out and we review it as kind of tech reviewers, we basically take 1 week, look at the phone, give you guys a review, but that doesn't necessarily give some sort of a final conclusion on the phone, because the longevity of a phone is just as important as us using it in the first week, which is why I'm kind of doing this 4-month review of the 2024 Moto Edge. And as far as I'm concerned, currently this phone is priced for $350, which I think, in my opinion, for what this phone brings over, is a steal. It launched at $599, which I think was a little bit of an overkill, but right now it's definitely appropriately priced. So let's go ahead and begin with the design conversation. So the material that they have on the back is very much what Motorola have used throughout the entirety of 2024 and throughout their lineup. It's this kind of fake vegan leather material, as they would like to call it. So fake leather, not full leather, but it does feel like leather. It does resemble leather. It's just not leather, essentially. It feels really good in hand. It gives this phone a definite premium look and feel. And if you notice these sides themselves, they're kind of edged out, I guess, hence the name of Moto Edge. But also, if you look at the kind of the way that the camera system is kind of housed, it also wraps so that this vegan leather material wraps all around the housing of the back of the phone. And you do get a dual camera setup with a 50 megapixel main sensor with optical image stabilization. More on the camera conversation later on. And as far as I'm concerned, the bottom of the phone does have your USB Type-C, your bottom-facing speaker, as well as a microphone, and your SIM tool spot. If you look at the right-hand side, this is where I'm not the biggest fan when it comes to this phone. So the power button and the volume up and down are really freaking thin. And I guess that's due to the sides being thin because of the Edge screen, which we will have a conversation about later on. But yeah, so very thin buttons. It did take a while to get used to. And when I say get used to, that doesn't mean that I finally, got comfortable with it. It just doesn't feel right, especially when you go back to phones that don't have these kind of thin buttons. But yeah, essentially that's basically the story behind the design. In my opinion, the material of choice that they used to basically keep this phone in a mid-range device is fine. There's nothing wrong with it. It feels good in the hand. It's a very thin and low-profile device. It does give you a nice grip. My only downside when it comes to it is the power volume up and down button. There's also a button on the left-hand side that we will definitely have a conversation about. So when it comes to the display of the phone, this phone does give you a 6.6-inch display, 2400 by 1080p. And it covers basically all the necessities of a modern display. So it's a POLED, 1 billion colors, HDR10+, 1300 nits of peak brightness, 402 pixels per inch density, and thanks to the Edge, you get a 90.2% screen to body ratio. Corning Gorilla Glass 3 for your protection. And yeah, so as far as I'm concerned, numbers say it on their own that this is a fantastic display. And the edges themselves is something you're either gonna like or hate. I know this is the basis of the phone. This is, at the end of the day, the Moto Edge. So the edges are the essential part of the phone, supposedly. But in my opinion, in my humble opinion, I feel like this design is to a point where it's a little bit washed. It's basically in the past. I'm not the biggest fan of the Edge. It's there. It looks cool, but it's not practical in my opinion. So in addition to the display as well, you also get the ability to have a refresh rate up to 144 Hertz, which is insane for a phone that costs $350. Mind you, I'm gonna say this in all my videos, the iPhone 16 and 16 Plus are still stuck at 60 Hertz, which is embarrassing if you ask me. But yeah, so everything that you would do on this display, you will not be disappointed for. Like I said, other than the edges that you either gonna like or hate, this phone has one of the best displays that I've seen for this price point. So watching videos, browsing the web, going through social media, things of that nature will be a breeze. Now, as far as the speaker goes, the speaker is also pretty good and pretty loud, and it's somewhat crisp. Your music playlist and the ability to choose which app to open up. So not all apps are supported, some are, some aren't, but this is definitely a welcome upgrade from the previous generation. The next thing is that they did improve the hinge design, so supposedly this is going to be like a smoother experience as far as opening. So as far as I'm concerned, so far when it comes to the design, the display department, this phone is a killer phone for the price or the money that you're paying for. Now let me shift the conversation to the performance, and I feel like this is a category where this phone does not shine as best as it should, but it's understandable for the money. So this phone has the following technical specs. So you get a octa-core processor, which is the Qualcomm Snapdragon 7S Gen 2 based on a 4nm architecture, the Adreno 710 GPU, 256GB of storage, 8GB of standard RAM, and you have RAM boost as well, which can use the storage itself to kind of boost your RAM. Mind you, this is my favorite feature. 5000 milliamp hour battery, 68 watts of wired charging, and 15 watts of wireless charging. Don't get me wrong, this phone does perform very well, very quick, thanks to the 144Hz refresh rate and the 8GB of RAM and the RAM boost and the decent processor, decent GPU. It even gives you a respectable bench score of 1017 single core and 2914 for your multi-core. But with that being said, I did notice this about this phone 4 months later. When it comes to playing games, doing things that require some sort of heavy tasks or on the GPU in general, it's gonna throttle down a little bit, which means that it's gonna slow down over a certain period of time. A lot of phones do, don't get me wrong, but this one does it a little bit faster. In addition to that, I think because of the phone's thin profile, it does get slightly warm, but everything else I can still respect. I think the biggest downside of this phone is in the performance. That's not a bad thing though. This phone overall, from a design to a display perspective, is a fantastic option. Now let's have the camera conversation. So this phone has a 50 megapixel main sensor, 13 megapixel ultra wide at a 120-degree field of view. You also have the ability to record 4K videos at 30 frames per second, 1080p at 30 or 60 frames per second, a 32 megapixel front-facing camera that does record video at 1080p at 30 frames per second. Using this camera was definitely fun. I do have to say, for $350, this phone delivers a solid camera experience. But for whatever reason, switching between your main sensor and your ultra wide was kind of laggy. It actually was slower than a lot of phones that cost way less than the Moto Edge. So that's something to also note. So this can be fixed with a software update. So far, 4 months later, it has not. As far as your image quality goes, I have a full dedicated camera review you can check out. But basically, like I said, a definite solid camera experience. Not the best that you'll ever see, but definitely takes some solid, respectable pictures that I don't have a problem sharing with you on social media. So crisp images, decent exposure, taking pictures of landscapes, buildings, things like that, it's definitely solid thanks to the decent dynamic range. Taking pictures of cars. Low light photography is a struggle, but that goes for pretty much most phones even today. So now I want to talk about this extra button that Motorola has laying around. It's on the left hand side of the phone, and it's again a thin profile button, but it actually has some cool functionality. So think of it as like an action button, which I feel like a lot more Android phones need to have this one. You can click it to basically launch any app that you desire. Not any app, but pretty much most apps. So I have it programmed to where I can launch messages, but you can change that in the settings. Have it programmed to where it launches your Google Maps, your contacts, your calendar, anything that will basically make your life a little bit more efficient, you can use that button for, which is pretty cool. So now let's draw a conclusion. So here's my stance on the 2024 Moto Edge. This still is a solid phone that I feel like kind of went under the radar. I don't know if it's because of the price point. I don't know if it's because of the actual Edge itself, but it's still such a steal in my opinion. If you're in the market for a new phone, consider the Moto Edge. Seriously consider it. If your budget is $350, this phone will deliver in a lot of categories. So I definitely like it. The vegan leather material on the back, though, when it catches dust, makes it very hard to clean. So keep that in mind, but it wasn't the end of the world. And yeah, so with that being said, if you have the Moto Edge and you had it for a while, let me hear your thoughts in the comments below. Let's have a conversation. So let me know what you guys think. I want to thank you all so much for watching, and I will definitely catch you guys in the next one. Thank you all for watching.